Hi there, Dr. PK here. Welcome to Lessons in 10 Minutes. Want to be a better writer? Better literature teacher? Try saying that 5 times. Become a better reader? Here's where to start. Today we'll be going over the elements of compelling storytelling. One of the very first elements we're going to be looking at is setting. Something you'll be able to use whether you're engaged in any of the aforementioned roles. In today's video, we'll be looking at how setting is more than simply where and when a story takes place. Sure, you learned that setting is where and when a story takes place back in middle school, right? This is level 1 thinking, and it is important. You got this in middle school for a reason, and it's likely a question you got asked on a high school quiz, kind of like the quiz that I just made up, right? But I want you to take it to the next level. Ask a level 2 question. How does the setting set up the action? How does it become a metaphor for the events and experiences of your characters? Asking these how questions will help you dig deeper and at the same time go higher. Higher level thinking is when you don't just answer the question by looking for the answer on the page. You're forced to look into things a little bit more. As a reader, you're getting further into the text with this question. As a teacher, you're constructing questions that push students' thinking. As a writer, though, you're now utilizing more tools for creating compelling storytelling. Let's look at some examples. Look at John Steinbeck's classic tale of Mice and Men. At the most basic level, the story takes place during the Great Depression in Soledad, California, the Salinas Valley. The whole story takes place in a short span of several days. When we start asking questions like, how does living during the Great Depression make George and Lenny's relationship special? Or how are they like the hobos and tramps that traveled on the trains? Or a question like, how might the notion of them being in Soledad add meaning to the story? How are the job opportunities influenced by the setting being in the Great Depression? When we do this, we are encouraging students to think on another level. Teachers, most of you would know this as really like Bloom's taxonomy, right? And for avid teachers and students, this is really looking at the lens through Costa's. Writers, this is where you're developing depth in your setting, and you need to do this. Game of Thrones fans know that Winterfell is not just a place, but an identity that creates both tension and releases it. In fact, Game of Thrones fans know that each of the places that George R. Martin created essentially become characters in and of themselves. They're not just places, but they are almost like people. Think of a place or a setting then in a series, and think of how that place acts, just as you examine how a character acts. This is one of the many strengths of that novel series. Even the television version recognizes this with the opening sequence that honors each and every locale. It's more than simply setting. This is a compelling element of storytelling. The compelling element becomes the story itself. For writers, can you write personality into a place? What characteristics does the place you're authoring have? Much like we talk about round and flat characters, places too can have flaws, foibles, and flavor. How does a place smell? What does it look like? Right? What are the senses that go along with this particular place? From a reader's perspective, try to look at these details not for just enjoyment, but for comprehension. In passages where authors are spending a lavish amount of time and a great number of words on this element, recognize and look for the personality because it will play a role in the story. The setting might present itself almost as a foe, an enemy to the main character. In the Ryan Reynolds film Buried, Ryan's character Paul is buried alive in a coffin, and the story takes place in the small confines of this coffin underground. Ryan's real-life wife, Blake Lively, has a film called The Shallows, where she's essentially stuck on a reef in water, not underground, as she tries to avoid being breakfast, lunch, or dinner to a shark. In Wreck-It Ralph, Ralph breaks the internet. Ralph finds himself trapped in the cyber world. There are books like The Hunger Games and the Divergent series, which take place in dystopian worlds, which essentially become places of battle for the characters. In Castaway, Tom Hanks is on this island where he's marooned, and this island serves up tension in the story. Looking at another series with an island as a setting, we see that the main protagonists deal with the island that seemingly has its own history and its own personality. This series is called Lost. It's a good example of a story where the setting is richly created so that it grows over time and essentially changes, much like a round character might. And time in Lost plays a key role. And for teachers, keep this in mind. Like all those times that you spend making study guides, if you're using the compelling elements that I'm going to teach you in this series, it really will shift how you have to ask questions, right? Because right now what's happening is, let's be honest, kids are probably finding answers on the internet. They're copying and pasting study guides. So how do we avoid that? We teach them to dig deeper, because until digging deeper becomes somewhere on the internet, we teach them to dig deeper, because they're going to have to dig deeper on the internet to find the answers to these higher level questions. Whereas right now, they don't really have to dig that far to find the answers because, well, they're surface level questions. So surface level Google search will help them find it really quickly. A literature teacher? As a literature teacher, to avoid having to spend endless nights reading the text and then coming up with questions for passage after passage, teach them the compelling elements of storytelling. It'll make them better readers. It'll make them more critical thinkers. It'll give them opportunities to expand their thinking in different directions rather than just these singular routes, right? And when you do that, you're probably going to end up saving yourself some time. Attached, you'll see some examples of how to do compelling storytelling. Attached, you'll see a worksheet that's kind of a universal compelling elements of storytelling worksheet that you can give out regardless of what book, what show, what show, what story they're reading. There's a great likelihood that it's going to use these compelling elements of storytelling. And no longer do you have to sit there and spend long nights like I did when I first started teaching. Spend long nights trying to figure out what questions am I going to ask about chapter 1? What questions am I going to ask about chapter 2? What questions am I going to ask about chapter 3? What questions am I going to ask about chapter 4? No. Ask these universal type questions, because these questions will be universal to good storytelling. In the end, whether you're a writer, a teacher, a reader, thinking on a higher level about the setting will make your enjoyment, your learning, and your crafting better. Recognize that setting sets up a compelling element, and that it's one of the key elements of good storytelling. Will help you become a better author, a better writer, and a better student. This has been Lessons in 10 Minutes. I'm Dr. PK, and your world has been lit.